Welcome to another improv tip of the month. I'm Bradley Sowash, jazz pianist and educator, and today we're going to be talking about how to play Deck the Hall with basic chords, and then we're going to jazz it up with some jazz chords and a Latin accompaniment. So I'll just play a little bit of that to get the sound of it in our ears as people file in, and then we'll break it down. Something like that. I never play things the same way twice. So let's do it this way. We're going to learn the melody just by rote here, and that really is the best way to learn a melody because it will stay in your mind longer, and it also will be a facilitator for improvisation because you won't have the black and white notes seeming so insistent. So let's learn the melody just by rote, and I do have a lead sheet here, and I'm always about transparency. Because when teaching, I want to make sure that I do it right. A lot of times I'll decorate things so much that it isn't actually the original. So I want to make sure I show you what I think is the original melody. So here's Deck the Hall, just the melody, and you're just going to put your hand in a 5-finger position, C, D, E, F, G, right on the piano. Okay? And then it's scale-like for the most part, and it sits right in that 5-finger position except for a B that goes below middle C. So we all know this tune, Deck the halls with boughs of holly. And then long before the Beatles were singing na, 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 people were singing fa la la la. So it starts on a G and comes right down. Deck the halls with. So everything is linear except for that last skip from E to C. G, F, E, D, C, D, E, C. Just get that in your bones because we're going to add a lot to this in a second. Now we just do a little, almost a turn or a little figure that starts on D. It's all linear, well mostly. It does have a skip in it. D, E, F, there's the skip. D, E, D, C. I'm going to cross my right index finger over my thumb and go C, B, C. So far we have G, F, E, D, C, D, E, C, a little flourish on D, D, E, F, D, E, D, C, B, C. Fortunately, that repeats, so it's exactly the same phrase. G, F, E, D, C, D, E, C, D, E, F, D, E, D, C, B, C. So as we learn a melody, it's also good to pick up on the form of the piece. So we have an A section or a strain that repeats exactly the same. So that means that we've already learned half the tune by learning one phrase. In fact, the last phrase is also very similar. So these are kind of things to clue into. Okay, so hopefully we have that. The second half pretty much stays in that position, but for a moment it moves a hand position to reach up as high as C. So we'll get our pinky up to C. So here's the second half. It starts on the note D. D, E, F, D, and you notice how that is the same figure in measure 3. Check it out. Measure 2. So we start on, the same motif as, all right? So just these kinds of things can help us, get it into our memory and not rely on our eyes so much. So the second half, again, the B section, I'll call it D, E, F, D, E, and then just like measure 4, we do that little crossover, D, C, B, C. So it's B section again, D, E, F, D, E, D, C, B, C, just like measure 3 and 4 and 7, 8. Now here's where we just go up a little bit. Of course we know this tune, but we want to get it in our instrument. And a little mental note, this is what I have to say. There's an F sharp here. We're in the key of C, but we have an F sharp. So I'm going to put my thumb on E and go straight up the scale, but with an F sharp. E, F sharp, G, and then all the way up to C. A, B, C. E, F sharp, G, A, B, C. And then straight down the scale. All right, let's do that bridge one more time. D, E, F, D, E, F, G, D. Okay, that note can catch you sometimes. I sometimes play an E there. And then we have that F sharp in this run. E, F sharp, G, A, B, C, right down the scale, B, A, G. Now the fourth strain is almost a return to the A section, but it has a little twist in the end. So it starts the same. G, F, E, D, C, D, E, C. And here's the change. Remember to go to an A here. So A, G, F, E, D, C. So let's just do the whole thing again, just with the melody in time. You know, do a little bit of foot percussion here just to hold it down. 1, 2, try it at home. And G, F, E, D, C, D, E, C, D, E, F, E, G, F, E, D. Flourish on D. D, E, F, D, E. Here's the B section. D, E, F, D, E, F, G, F sharp coming. Just like the beginning. A. Okay, so let's just check in with people. And if you're just joining us, I'm Bradley Sowash, jazz pianist and educator. And today I'm just showing a quick learn by rote jazz version of Deck the Hall. Right now we just learned the melody. Let me check in with some other people who dropped in. Nice to see some familiar friends here. And I'll just mention that, you know, a lot more people watch this as a replay. And since this is being recorded, if you're watching this replay, I hope you're joining me in person next time. I really like knowing that you're there. It really inspires me to teach better when there's people on the other end. Let's put the chords together next. So far we've learned the melody, and we're just going to learn the chords. And I'm just going to show you what are the basic chords that you might find in a simple Christmas book or a hymn book or something like that. So more or less, these are your basic chords here. And they're almost all primary chords. In the key of C, that would be C, F, and G. But there's a little mental reminder here that we have a secondary dominant here. We have a D7 in here, a note that is not in the key. So when I look at a chord progression, I look for what I call rogue chords to remind me that I'm going to have something special here, something outside of the world of white keys. So there's a little mental reminder there. So I'm going to just play right now these chords, and I'll leave them up on the screen, and then I'm going to just do it with a basic accompaniment, then we'll make it more interesting in a minute. But even before I do that, just notice the symmetry. C, C, G, C, G, C. C, C, G, C, G, C. So these are identical. And the big important change to our ear is this 5 chord right here in the middle section. Da, 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 da. So G, and as expected, 5's resolved to 1, so G to C. It's easy to think about the logic of the chords as well as the sequence. G, da, 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 da. There's that D we might forget. Sorry, D, G, D, G. I said that a little early, but and then the last one's almost like the beginning. But we have that A in the melody, and the F chord picks that up. A, G is the melody, so we have F, 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 C, C, G, C in all 3 of these. So it's very, very symmetrical. Okay, so I'll just play this with simple chords here, and we'll just see how that sounds. You do the same. A little bit of foot percussion. 1, 2, 1, 2, start on C. D. There's other ways we could interpret that. We could throw in an extra C here. There's different things we could do, but let's just call that our basic chords. And now let's think about how we could doll that up, make it a little bit more jazzy, and that will be just not only with harmony, but typically when we convert a traditional tune to jazz, we want to think about the groove as well. So for this, I chose a sort of a basic generic Latin groove. And every time I use that word Latin, I feel compelled to say that Latin is a gigantic umbrella for so many styles like cha-cha and bossa nova and samba and salsa and montunos, and we could just go on and on. So I want to acknowledge that by saying Latin, I'm doing sort of a first world, catch-all to the what is a huge style. In fact, Suzanne down in Brazil is probably hearing a little bit of that music locally. I hope. Although I know transportation is a challenge for you right now. So let me just say hello to a couple of people. Alice, I want to call her out. We're talking about how to play tunes by ear today, and she was the first one to order a new resource I put out just 2 days ago, well, 1.5 days ago, called Christmas Fake Book with Jazz Chords. It's a little bit of what we're going over today. In fact, this tune is in that book. It's a PDF download. She was the first one ever in history to download it, and thank you, Susan, for pointing out an error that I've already corrected. And Elaine, here's a longtime acquaintance who's a student, and Elizabeth and Faye ordered it yesterday. So Alice is loving it. Good. Thank you for that support. So if you need a written version, you could take a look at that. So let's just assume that you have the melody and chords down. I know we have some terrific musicians here, so we probably have most of that, and your ear can fill in for what maybe is a little bit of a stumbling block. So let's just first put a accompaniment to it, and then we'll add more chords to it. So the accompaniment I'm going to use is that generic Latin accompaniment, and you hear it in tangos and all kinds of styles, and there are very many variations on it, but the essence of it is that it's roots and fifths of the chords. So you just as half notes, you could imagine that sounding like this. But we're going to give it that lopsided, famous Latin rhythm, which is, for those of us who are in the know, the first half of a clave rhythm. Sometimes this rhythm, when it's independent, it's called Arumba Rhythm. And so it's just 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. And so I know some of you came to the last couple of improv tip of the months over the summer where we talked about rhythm boxes and rhythm boards. I'll just demonstrate this rhythm with my favorite way to show, which is non-notation way. This is 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, just one measure there. And then the second measure, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So downbeats are here and offbeats are in between. And so this famous rhythm has 3/8 notes in the first part, 3/8 notes in the second part, and 2/8 notes in the last part, which is why I called it 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Buck, gag, 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 gag. Just that rhythm alone is giving it a Latin character. And this is a very old rhythm, and there's a lot of very interesting, musicology going into why this rhythm is so predominant around the planet. So if you want to study about that, look up clave and go deeper on it. It's not just your everyday rhythm. It's a rhythm that it results when you play in 6/8 and 4/4 at the same time. Wow, blow your mind. Okay, anyway, that. Now often this is root, fifth. So C, G, G. A lot of times it can be C, high G, low G, C, D, da. But it doesn't always have to be root fifth. You can also play fifth root. So when I get to the G chord, instead of bouncing my hand all around the keyboard for convenience, I'm going to play D, G, G. So C, G, G, C, G, G. Then I get to the G chord, D, G, G. Then my hand stays in there, and it works pretty well, particularly when it's not the tonic chord. So there's my rhythm. And I'm just going to do that with these chords. And maybe I'll show the chords so we can do it. And I'm on the C chord, and I'm just going to play C, G, G, C, G, G. And if you don't like the octave, you can easily play C, G, G, C, G, G. Lots of ways to do that rhythm. And then I get to the G chord, D, G, G, something like that. So let's just hear it with these basic chords. Just introducing that rhythm or in the left hand adds quite a bit, even with the basic chords. So 1, 2, 1, 2. Here we go on C. Now D, G. Repeat that. C. Now on the G. C. Did you catch the D? F. So here's a tip: if you're playing that bass line and you're on the fly and you get a little mixed up and you can't grab it in time, just go with it. Just leave the hole. It's not like the end of the world. We're always about survival in this style. Sarah asks, any tips about putting the hands together? So what I would do is figure out how they line up. It's a really nice question. Let's just say you're having trouble with the first measure. I didn't think I was going to get into this, but this is a wonderful use of the rhythm boxes. So here, let's try this. 1, 1, 2, D, D, D. Okay, so let's just call this the right hand. Da, 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 da. 1 and 2 and 3, 4. And then in the left hand, we'll put that bass line down that I put down. And this is the kind of cerebral way that you can get things to line up. And what I'm going to notice here, for example, in measure 1, and you might do this through each measure, is that they're almost the same rhythm. D, da, 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 which is why this lends itself to a Latin interpretation. So here's the melody, da, 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 and I can see the left hand lines up here, it lines up here, the right hand is alone for a second, and then they line up. So I might say both, let's see, what would be a one syllable for alone? Both, single, both, I can't think of it just now. Maybe somebody could put it in there. I even wrote it in my Creative Chords books, because I used to say together. Anyway, so both, single, both. That's how I would think about cerebrally getting them together. And then, of course, you go from what I call mechanic to organic through repetition, and then you just have that Latin rhythm in your hands. I almost said Latin rhythm. So rat, think, was the big word when I was a teenager. Sidebar. All right, let's go now and make the chords cooler. You could say left or right. Oh, but both. Yeah, it could be specific. Thank you, Faye. So yeah, I would say both, right, both. This is weird doing this upside down. Both right, both. I like it, Faye. Faye's not a very experienced teacher, so that is a great tip. Alice said the same thing. Both, one. Yeah, that works. Yep. Thanks, Diana. Okay, so let's go to these chords and think about how we might jazz these up a little bit. Now, in the fake book I mentioned earlier with the lead sheets of public domain Christmas tunes, let me just say a word about that. I put that together over the years. I went through my old Christmas books, and over the years I'd play at parties and stuff, and I'd write in better chords. As I think, oh, that's neat, and I didn't want to remember it. And that's how these lead sheets came together. So since they happen on gigs and in real life, they're not esoteric, crazy jazz chords. Although I like doing that kind of thing. Let's just give that a go. Let's see. We might go, let's see. Whoo! I love doing that kind of stuff, but this is real life stuff. This is stuff that will just enhance your playing it in a way that ordinary non-jazz aficionados can enjoy. So let's see walk you through the process of how we might come up with some better chords. We're going to keep these first two measures the same, but we're going to color it. We're going to take that first measure, or that chord, and we're just going to make that a major 7. So M, A, J, 7. I'm writing sideways, and that's the weirdest M I ever saw. But there it is. And then we'll just keep that going through this second measure. But here, notice we have a G7. So in jazz, we're going to often precede the 5 chord with a 2 chord. And the 2 in this key is D minor 7. So a lot of times jazzers will just look for 5 chords and throw in the 2 of the key, the second chord in the key, D minor, G, C. And then here, just for variety, we're just going to do a little F here, just to get a quick change of chord here. da, da, da. So let's listen to that. So listening to just the chords, we have D minor, G7, F. So it just draws it up a little bit. And it's interesting, if you want to write a G13 here instead, well, the 13th of this chord is an E, and that's the note in the melody. So that might be both a mental way to remember the melody, but it also might be a way to color that chord a little bit. So the second phrase is, you'd think would be the same, but I don't ever like to play anything the same. So I'll just walking you through the process here. The second phrase, I decided to throw in an A minor 7 because that's so much like a C major 7. This time I'll use the delta, the other symbol for major 7. So those are the same. But I'm going to do an A minor 7 here. And that will just give us some variety. Since it's a direct repeat, that's going to build it up. And since A minor is in motion down from the C, I'll make a little mellow note to play a B in the bass line. So that gets me C, B, A, like this. Right? And then when we put an F here before, we're gonna do that again. Well, let me just say it this way. We're gonna put an F here, and we're gonna do an F6. And the reason that an F6, you'd say, why don't you just do a D minor 7? They're the same notes. Well, the reason is I want to imply that you're going to play an F in the bass there. And so now we have a bass line. C, B, A. Well, this is begging for a G. So just listen to that bass line. We can run it right down. C, B, A, G, F. So now we just created a little action here. And can't see this side of the board. Thank you. Yeah, turn it there better. Thank you, Alice. Appreciate the participation. So these really are the same, but in this case I put a very similar chord to A minor. In fact, to C and A minor, the top of this chord. The top of C chord is, how do I say this? C chord is the top of an A minor 7 chord. And if you want to go so far as to think of an A minor 9, then the whole top 4 notes match this. But anyway, we have this nice bass line. C, B, A, G, F, G. And again, we're going to change this to F here. So these are just very logical changes, but they create a lively motion. On the bridge, we're gonna keep the essence of it there because that big change to G is a big deal, right? But and again, we're just going to add a major 7 here using the deltas to represent major 7. And then we're going to just take that same bass line just for motion and to create a setup for D. So we're going to set up D with in a way a 2 chord in the key of G. That's how I think of it. We have a dominant 7 chord, so I'm going to proceed. I'm working backwards now with an A minor 7. Working backwards is a great tip when you're think about your resolutions and work backwards when you're building chord subs. So we'll keep this C and we'll put a bass line in here. So maybe that's a C major 7 still. But so now we have G, da, 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 C, B, A, D, G. That gives us a little motion there. So let's just listen to that. I know I'm off screen, but you can hear it. Listen to this bass line. And then here's your D. Now the melody on that D is a B, and that's also a 13, just like it was up here. So a lot of times a crazy jazz chord is not a crazy jazz chord, it's just dealing with the melody. But having played a 13 there, maybe I'll put a 9 on here or something like that, keep those richer. And then when we come home, we're pretty much do the same as the beginning. So we put the major 7 on there, but we do have that F chord to deal with. And so I like that second bass line better. So I'm going to grab that again. This is identical to this. A minor 7. Have that same bass line coming down. And I'm going to put a major 7 on this. Add an E to that chord for color. And this is where I'm going to make a substitution. To bring it home, I'm going to come straight down the chords and go F, E minor 7. Coming straight down, and then here it's begging for a D minor 9 or D minor 7, whatever you think, something like that. And maybe we'll color up that last chord. It could be a C6 or a C major 7, you decide. So that last little bit then is like the second line, but it has that little F chord to deal with. So just with the bass line. Huh. I, I want to tell you another cool idea before I go on. That this is a fun thing to do right here. We're going to set up this in the same way that we set up the D. We're going to set up this by working backwards. We're going to put a C7 to lead us into the F, and then we're going to play its 2, if you will. 2, 5, 1, and F. Now we have a cool line here. G minor 7 with an E on top. Isn't that nice? And now the E minor. Let's call this a 9 because the melody is an E. Don't want to get too lost in the weeds here, but I know that you're going to go back and look at this, so I want to get it right. Okay, so something like that. Diana likes the G minor 7. Yep, and just think about working backwards when you do those chords. Okay, so now I'm going to put this all together and do it with a Latin bass line. And if I stumble a little bit, in other words, if I'm just giving you the advice, if you stumble a little bit and kind of miss one, maybe you're having trouble with the D and the G. Actually, this takes care of itself. If you start your ding, ding, ding on the note D, it beautifully works out. Here I would just drop the bass lines, too many chords, F, G, C. But if you have a little trouble, maybe this G doesn't come out and you're playing, it doesn't matter, just get your landmarks. I'm going to put some of the harmony in my right hand since I'm playing a bass line. So I'm going to hang some chords off the melody. So in order to get a C major 7 for measure 1, I'm going to put that in my thumb and an E in my middle finger, my right hand. And I'm just going to hold those down. So my right hand is playing a little bit of harmony under the melody since the bass line is making these big leaps and it's hard to deal with. It's basically impossible to play chords and that bass line at the same time. So that's how I'm grabbing these harmonies. They're right hand hang chords, something I teach in my classes. So just kind of a simple, straightforward version of this with a little bit of foot percussion and not too fast. 1, 2, ready, and C major 7. D minor. Whoops. It'd be better to do chords, I just have to pause. Nice. So it's lively, it's cheery, it's seasonal. These kinds of bright little tunes can be just so sparkly if we take the time to put a little bit of unexpected but not crazily esoteric adjustments to it. And what we did to this one was we changed the expected accompaniment to a Latin one, and we put some new chords in. So that's kind of the gist of how you put together a jazz arrangement, and then we think about the forms, such as when do we want to play the melody, when do we want to embellish, when do we want to play a solo or ad lib, what do we want to do in the end, do we want intros and endings, these kinds of things. All things I teach, but the essence of it is finding the twist, and the twist here is more interesting chords and a more interesting bass line or an unexpected bass line. So I'm gonna go out by just if you need to take off, you can do that, but I'm gonna spend a few minutes here just having fun on this tune in a Latin style and kind of milk it a little bit. What my friend and student Diana calls ramming and jamming. So I'll leave it on the piano now for to have some fun, and we'll just see how we might turn this into more of a complete performance here. And I'm going to do that to inspire me with a bossa nova bass line here. So I just happen to have that built into my piano, and I let that sink in. I always let the groove permeate before I start playing music on it. Even if I'm generating that myself, I think of the groove. Notice that I'm moving. One of my favorite rhymes is, you've got to move to groove. Maybe I'll start with the bass line. Now here's a tip. You can sometimes solo on the basic chords that we did in the beginning and just make the solo simpler. So I'll do one more solo on the basic chords, and then I'll go back to the jazz chords for the melody and basic chords. Back to the jazz chords. I'll do the big ending. I don't know what that was. So, I'm Bradley Sowash, jazz pianist and educator, and I'm really glad you spent some time with me today. I'll see you next month for another improv tip of the month in this series called Barrel of Carols. Learn another Christmas tune with me, and until then, you enjoy your creative music making journey.